This is exactly how I would invest 20,000 euros in the crypto market right now. You can feel it again at the moment. The FOMO is starting to come back a little. I've received this question several times over the past few days, whether on Telegram or in my DMs in general. Hey Vincent, how would you currently invest 10,000 euros in the crypto market? Or, hey Vincent, what would you do with 20,000 euros in the crypto market right now? And that's exactly why in today's video, I'm going to show you very specifically how I would invest 20,000 euros right now. And afterwards, as a little bonus for today's video, we'll even put together a second portfolio made up exclusively of low caps. Actually, I should probably rename this portfolio as a kind of gamble portfolio, so it's absolutely high risk. You really have to be extremely careful when it comes to low caps, I have to say. But of course, there are also some viewers who want exactly that and are aware of the risks. So that's why in today's video, we'll go into great detail about it. Otherwise, if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Also, feel free to write in the comments, how would you invest the 20,000 euros at this point in time? And before we get to the specific altcoins, I want to make one thing clear. I am not paid by any of these projects. I have no relationship with any of the altcoins. This is all just my personal opinion. It is not financial advice. And please be aware of the risks. Because one thing I can tell you, it is definitely not the optimal time to throw large sums into the crypto market right now, since we've already seen some price pumps here. At this point, I have to ask, what exactly have you been doing over the past few weeks, the past few months, when we really saw some incredibly good prices? Many out there have been sleeping, many have truly missed out, and that's why today's important video is specifically directed at those particular sleepers who unfortunately missed the last incredibly cheap opportunities in crypto. That's why I would say what I'm presenting to you here is a kind of last resort. As I said, it's not the optimal solution. If you had stayed up to date and watched all the YouTube videos, you definitely would have been positioned much earlier and much better. But since I know, of course, that there are beginners out there, and since I also know that, let's say, others currently want to take advantage of the opportunity in the crypto market, I want to break down very transparently what my approach would be if, for example, I had completely missed the boat and now wanted to invest 20,000 US dollars in the crypto market. That's why I wanted to get this information out of the way right at the beginning of the video, because otherwise I'll get comments again like on, hey Vincent, you shouldn't be buying now. We've already pumped quite a bit or something like that. Of course, I'm aware of that, and personally, I'm already sitting on some profits, especially from the altcoins that I've introduced here time and again. Nevertheless, this video is also potentially aimed at newcomers, or generally speaking, at investors who still want to invest now, come hell or high water, so to speak. Still, on the other hand, you also have to say, it's still somewhat okay, I'd say, to invest at the moment. We have a fear and greed index of 63, so there's still some room to grow. I definitely wouldn't be making this video if we were in a phase of extreme greed right now. In that case, I would also say, hey guys, you'd better think about selling. At the moment, we're in a tricky in-between stage where you can still say, okay, in some cases it might actually still make sense to invest some capital here and there, but I definitely wanted to mention that there's still room to grow, but we're also no longer completely in a state of fear. We're also not at really low levels anymore. So right now, it's really kind of an in-between situation we're in, and that's why I'm making this YouTube video today. You're probably wondering why I even gave USCT here at all right now. Because there's one thing I want to mention here as well. You should never invest 100% of everything all at once. And that's why it's extremely important that you always have USCT, always have liquidity in your portfolio. That's why I'm demonstrating it here for you. The absolute minimum right now is kind of an 80-20 rule. So with 20k, 5k is the absolute minimum. Actually, it should be even a bit more. But if we assume that you might potentially have a monthly cash flow or maybe some emergency reserves in case there are individual dips, then I would say it's also okay like this. But please always be aware that you should never invest everything, and a minimum, so 20% is really the absolute minimum you should have. And especially later on in the low cap portfolio, which is significantly riskier, it's much more important to keep liquidity on hand, because there we have much more volatile altcoins. And it definitely makes sense, I would say, to have a ratio of 20k to 10k. So please always be aware that you should never go all in there. That's what I would call rule number 1 anyway. Now, as for the very first position in my 20,000 US dollar portfolio, in my opinion, that would be Ethereum. I know getting in at this point is absolutely awful, and that's why I said at the beginning of the video that in general it's a bit suboptimal to set up a fresh portfolio right now, but for demonstration purposes, that's what we're doing here. Suppose I were forced to create a fresh portfolio, then I would do it exactly as I'm demonstrating here. That's why at this point I would put in 0.9 Ethereum, which is 4,200 US dollars. You can see it right here. I can also quickly move the face cam here so you can see it right here. It's all a bit awkward right now with the face cam, but I think you can get an overview here. So this would be my approach when it comes to Ethereum. What is my personal goal with this portfolio? When would I sell off Ethereum in this case? In this case, my current price target is just under a 2x, not quite a full 2x. I want to sell Ethereum at around 8,000 US dollars, give or take. So I'm not expecting a huge performance or massive returns here, but I still want to have a certain core in my portfolio, a kind of safety net, so to speak, so that I'm not just left with altcoins. That's all for this portfolio for now. Next, let's move on to the very first altcoin position I want to build, and in this case, that's Casper. Personally, I'm very bullish on it because I think it could develop a very strong narrative as digital silver. Here we basically have the same proof of work mining mechanism as with Bitcoin. You also need GPU computing power to mine these Casper coins. In my opinion, it's an incredibly strong layer 1. We have good listings and there's potential for a Binance listing coming up. And from a purely technical chart perspective, things look very clean here as well. We've established a double bottom here too. We've slowly but surely broken through this structural downtrend. And I think at this point, at 9.8 US cents, it's still reasonably okay. I mean, it's not exactly super cheap anymore, but for me personally, it's not like I've completely missed the boat yet. And that's why I definitely want to build a position in the portfolio here as well. So that's why we're going in on Casper at this point. 43,000 coins at this point, currently valued at 9.8 cents. So 4,200 US dollars are going into Casper. What is my personal price target there? We can also take a quick look at that here. What is my personal price target? So the last all-time high was at 20 cents. In my opinion, 30 cents should definitely be achievable. That's why I'll be making my exit somewhere between 30 and 50, at most 60 cents. So here, I want to take profits at around a 3 to 6 times gain. That's basically my goal. If I sell between a 3 and 6 times gain, then maybe net I'll end up with a 4 times return overall, and that would definitely be a good performance, I'd say, from the current standpoint. And that's why I've positioned Casper here similarly to how I did with Ethereum. Let's move on to the next altcoin, Tao, which in my opinion is the best AI altcoin at the moment. We have an incredibly large ecosystem here. There are many Tao subnets. A lot has happened in the last few weeks, and here too, the chart remains extremely stable. And I can easily imagine that we'll see price targets here of over 1,000 US dollars. So that's my goal as well. Let's say to take profits at around 3 times or more. I can even imagine that we might see 1,500, maybe even 2,000 US dollars. It all depends on how strong the altcoin season will actually be. But still, I definitely want to secure my exit in good time, so you can absolutely start selling off at around 1,000 US dollars. So that's basically my strategy for Tao. But in my opinion, it's more than realistic that we'll reach the previous all-time high here. And that's why I want to build a good position in Tao as well. At this point, I've added 8 Tao, about 3,100 US dollars, add transaction, and it's included. So now it's 16,600 US dollars. As I said, in total, it's not 20, but 25,000 US dollars in this case, since we also have USDT in the portfolio. So now we're definitely moving on to the next project, which is an RWA project. You can already see a bit of the direction the whole portfolio is taking. I definitely want to have each narrative roughly covered. Here you can see a bit of an overview of which narratives are currently present. I definitely want to have AI in the portfolio. I want to have a layer 1 in the portfolio. So that's my current focus, but a layer 1. Then I want to have RWA projects in there, and then optionally maybe a gaming project or maybe a meme coin. But that's basically my current approach. I look at which sectors exist at the moment, and then I pick out the best projects from each sector. In this case, it's somewhat more conservative, so to speak. I'm focusing more on high caps in this portfolio. Later in the low cap portfolio, of course, other altcoins will be added, but for now I want to clearly focus on the blue chip projects, basically the biggest projects from each sector. And that's why I definitely want to include Ondo here as well. In my opinion, $1 is still fairly reasonable. Yes, it might not be as cheap as before, but for me personally, the train hasn't completely left the station yet. That's why I think it's fine to build a position here as well, especially so that you're represented in the RWA sector as well. That's why we're going in on Ondo here. The current price is $1, and in this case, I want to buy a total of 2,600 Ondo at a price of $1.06. We'll just add the whole thing. So now in this case, we're at 19,300 US dollars. Now let's move on to the next project, which is Injective. In my opinion, it's a strong layer 1. All tokens are in circulation. We can take a look here. All token unlocks have been completed, so we no longer have to worry about potential inflation. Personally, I really like the way the project is presented. We have all the listings, we have a good track record, and we're also represented here in the RWA sector, which in my opinion, together with AI, will definitely be one of the top narratives. And at this point, I want to hold the position at around 2,000 US dollars. That's why we're going to add it now. Now we're at 21,400 US dollars. We have a top AI project, we have a layer 1, and we have some Ethereum as the core of the portfolio. We have 2 RWA projects, RWA layer 1. Now at this point, we have 3,500 US dollars left. What I want to add now is Virtual's protocol, simply to be, in quotation marks, covered in the sense that I have the AI agent hype or the AI agent narrative included. A project like this is definitely a bit riskier since it represents a new narrative. Current market cap, 900 million. We can also see at the moment that the relative strength isn't particularly good, but still, yes, in my opinion, the chart is currently fine. We've been penalized a bit over the last few days. That could also work in our favor as we're building the portfolio right now. But still, I don't want to build too large a position here. It's, let's say, more of a high-risk project, but accordingly, it also has a bit more potential since it represents a new narrative. And that's why, at this point, I'll build the position with exactly 1,000 virtuals coins. That amounts to about 1.3 thousand US dollars at this point, add transaction. So now we're already at 22.8. That means we've checked off this position as well. So now we're at 22,800 US dollars, which means we still have about 2,000 US dollars left. And these 2,000 US dollars will now be split between two different projects. Project number one is Superverse. I just want to make sure that I have at least one project from the gaming sector represented so that I basically have some gaming infrastructure in my portfolio. In my opinion, the chart also looks pretty good. Higher interim lows, higher interim highs, and that's why, for me, it's still legitimate to build a position here. At this point, we'll do exactly 1,200, which is a price or dollar value of 999 US dollars. That fits perfectly, let's add it, and now we still have 1,200 US dollars left, which will go into the last project. So now we definitely have gaming represented. We have layer 1, we have RWA, we have AI agent. So for me personally, everything is basically covered. We could optionally add a meme coin now. That would be an option. But I deliberately want to make the portfolio a bit more conservative here. That's why I will intentionally not include a meme coin here, simply because I want to build a somewhat more stable or conservative portfolio here. And that's why the last position will go into Clearpool at this point. For me personally, it's the little brother of Bit and Sortao. In my opinion, the tokenomics fit here. The chart also looks fine. Beautiful bottoming phase, and right now we're also seeing a breakout here. We're currently at 20 US cents. The last all-time high was at 55 US cents. So I expect a 3 to maybe even 8 times increase from here. Here we definitely have significantly higher potential because the market cap is still a bit smaller. Still, I don't want to build up a huge position here simply because it's still a somewhat smaller project. That's why I want to be a bit more cautious here and will put in the last 1.2k, so to speak. To get everything exactly right, I picked up another 5,730 Clearpool, $1,200 at transaction. So in this case, we're exactly at 25,072 US dollars. We've spent 25,000 US dollars. Right now, we're up 0.28% in profit since this recording, so you don't wonder if I miscalculated or anything like that. Here you can basically see what was spent, and here you can see the profit at this point. That's how it looks at the moment. Yeah, feel free to write in the comments how you would have handled this portfolio. Of course, I know this is somewhat, in quotation marks, more conservative, but that's how I would approach it at this point if I were new to the crypto market or anything like that. So that would be my approach here, so to speak. You could also consider keeping a bit more USDT on the side in case there are potential dips. But this is, let's say, a rough overview. Feel free to write in the comments which project you think was missing here in this case. Now, in any case, we're moving on to the low cap or gerbil portfolio. I honestly just considered whether I even want to show it or include it in today's YouTube video. But since I promised it at the beginning, I definitely want to at least mention it briefly. Otherwise, today's YouTube video will end up being way too long again. You probably already noticed that from the last YouTube video, which was also very, very long. Today, I don't want to go too much into detail about individual low caps, but rather just show you a brief example for demonstration purposes. Because at the end of the day, you can also just watch the last altcoin video if you like. There, I went into a bit more detail. But this is roughly what a low cap / gamble portfolio could look like, one that really only consists of low caps in this case. So even mid caps are pretty much not included here at all. The largest position is actually Clearpool. Everything else is around 150 or under 100 million market cap. That's roughly what it looks like. Feel free to take a screenshot or whatever you like, but be extremely careful with these positions. It's really a total roller coaster, extremely volatile. Still, I myself am also invested in some of these low caps. As I said, I don't want to go too much into detail, otherwise the YouTube video will get too long. And secondly, I don't really want to talk too much about these super tiny projects, since I already covered that in the last video. In general, we can go into more detail about that in the live streams, so just so you're aware. But I still want to, also for myself personally, put together a comprehensive portfolio just for my own genuine interest, to observe what is very possible and what could truly potentially happen, and so that we've also properly and neatly set everything up at this point. In this particular case, it's 21,000 US dollars because I wanted to add another new project. So basically 21,000 is the starting point and there's still 10,000 left in liquidity. I can keep you updated on this YouTube channel if I make any additional purchases or if new low caps come out. Of course, in a real altcoin season, assuming that happens, it's also an opportunity to add newly emerging projects to the portfolio. So that's roughly an insight and overview. That's all I have to say. I enjoyed making today's YouTube video. Feel free to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments how you'd build a crypto portfolio with 20,000 US dollars now. Also, feel free to leave criticism if you think, hey Vincent, you must be crazy here, or maybe, hey Vincent, I'd have done things differently. Of course, I'd be interested to hear that as well. Otherwise, if you're new to the YouTube channel, feel free to check out the link I've placed up here on the top left. Watch this YouTube. It's a masterclass and A to Z course on how to get started in the crypto market. If you're wondering where I personally buy my cryptocurrencies, I definitely use Bitpanda. It's the best MiCA regulated exchange. That's where I buy and sell my cryptocurrencies, and later I execute my trades on Bittrex. It's definitely my exchange of choice. By the way, there's still an open long position there. Everything works really smoothly. You can also grab a $400 bonus with the link in my video description, so now you're definitely in the know. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and I'll see you in the next video.